me say good morning to the entire Trial State, Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. Good morning, good morning. Welcome to another edition of To The Point. Today being Thursday, the 29th of September, 2022. Welcome one and all, especially our listeners via K105. Good morning, whatever part of the island you're listening to us via this morning. Let me say good morning to you, and thanks for making K105 your choice. Let me say good morning to our social media platform, those of you who are listening and viewing via our social media platform. That's Facebook. Hey, good morning to you folks over there, whatever part of the world you may be viewing and listening from. Welcome to The Point for today. And also those of you via our YouTube channel, good morning. Thanks for viewing and listening there also. This morning we, of course, you know what happens on a Thursday here on To The Point. We do have a representative from the Royal Grenada Police Force. We have Sergeant Francisca Noel with us this morning. Let's go over to her and say good morning. Good morning to you, Sergeant Noel. How are you doing this morning?
Good morning, GT, and good morning to our viewing and listening audience. I am very well, thank you, and happy to be here with you this morning.
All right, certainly welcome. Nice to have you with us this morning. Now, I'll before we get into our discussion this morning, what we're going to chat about, I would like you to give the listening and viewing audience out there a bit of description of pertaining to the particular unit that you're representing this morning from the Royal Grenada Police Force. Go right ahead.
Thank you. This morning I'm coming from the Criminal Investigations Department. That is our main investigative department of the Royal Grenada Police Force, dealing with serious crimes, and I am head of the Digital Forensic Unit, which is part of that department. At the Digital Forensic Unit, we investigate and support our investigators in terms of incidences relating to electronic crimes and also other crimes that may be committed that involves electronic evidence. And when I speak of electronic evidence, I'm speaking of evidence that are found on our devices, whether it's our smartphones, our tablets, and so forth, and as well that are stored or housed in the cloud.
All right.
Yes.
That's interesting because, you know, in the world today, technology plays a major role in terms of how crimes are committed these days.
Yes.
Some folks will just sit at their table or at a computer in whatever part of their house, their bathroom,
yes,
and commit a crime these days. You understand? And it's good that we have a particular unit being part of the Royal Grenada Police Force who are able to look into that and have to bring some solutions to individuals on the whole. I'm certainly happy to hear that. Now let's get into the conversation this morning once again. And this morning, let's kick it off in terms of folks may ask, you know, is there any particular legislation or act that governs the running of the department? If I could ask it in that particular way.
Right. In terms of the act governing the department, not necessarily so, but that would guide our operations on a daily basis in terms of being able to identify, extract or seize digital evidence and then to analyze in order for prosecution or for further investigations. And many of the incidents that we investigate falls under the Electronic Crimes Act. This is Act number 13 of 2013, because it was indeed passed in the year 2013. And the Electronic Crimes Act was drafted in 2009, later passed. We have 14 offenses that were captured under that act. 2 has been repealed and not replaced, so now we have 12 of those offenses under the act. Charges have been laid under the act in different areas, and this morning I want to speak on 4 of those that we see, you know, populating or propagating ever so often. And as you said, we use technology so much more now, and we have so many other persons having access to technology as well, and we have seen, you know, increases in the type of offenses under the act. So the 4 areas of concern for us would be the identity theft, violations of privacy, child pornography, and of course fraud. Now, because
let's spend a little time before we move. Yes. Let's spend a little time in terms of the offenses, some of the offenses that we see happening in terms of in the digital world today. What are some of the key offenses that your department, of course, come across from time to time?
Right, so specifically under the act, right, we're looking at child pornography, electronic fraud, identity theft, violation of privacy. The most prevalent of those would be violation of privacy.
Violation of privacy.
And when I delve into it, you can understand why that is so, right? But we're going to get into that later. And of course, we want to make persons aware of what the legislation speaks to, right? Because we have persons committing acts that they do not see any harm in, but when we understand the act, we would realize that our actions are indeed in violation of the law, and we want to make sure that persons understand that they can, face consequences for the actions that they, sometimes innocently or sometimes just for making a joke of it.
Exactly.
They would do certain things.
So let me ask this: when you state something there that sort of grabbed my attention just a bit, because you said that sometimes folks do commit these acts, and sometimes they think, well, it's okay. Example: I post a picture of someone online. You understand? And and I may think, well, I'm doing it for the joke of it, maybe, but you say no, that can be under the act. That's a serious offense per se, especially if the person didn't give me the authorization or so forth to go forward and do that.
Right. In some contexts, depends on the type of photograph, depends on what connotations are added to it. Yes, that would be offensive in terms of violating that person's privacy, right? We're going to get into that later on. And of course, where you use persons, the identity theft part, it happens, very subtly as well. And we're going to be able to. So
when in terms, we still on it. Let's talk a wee bit on the if you could expand on something on the offensive the part of it. When you say the part, of course, the identity theft part of it per se. How is that played into the act? Right.
So under the act in section 7, right, someone violates that section or they infringe on the law when they make fraudulent use or dishonest use of an electronic or use an electronic device to capture or use a person's signature, their password, or any other unique identifying feature of that person. So let's say, for instance, GT is known. He has your picture and so forth might be out there on social media. Persons may know different things about you, right? Let's say your date of birth that you may have used for accessing, certain services and so on. If I were to take that information and purport to be GT, right? That would be using your identity or more or less framing somebody else, framing myself as GT in order to be able to appear online, right? And of course, we're speaking about digitally. So it's not just like taking a photograph of your ID or reprinting it, but when you use your electronic means. And of course, we know that in the electronic realm, and especially on the internet, when we post, we really cannot take back what we would have sent out, right? So we have to really drive the point home too of before you click, you have to think about what you're doing. Yes. So the information, unique information about someone, what would be able to I say, okay, this is GT, this is Francesca, right? That information that is unique towards me. When that is lost or when it is used other than I'm the person using it, that is termed of identity theft.
All right.
Right?
So for instance, just cutting in here. So for instance, someone takes my identity information and decides, well, I'm going to use it for whatever reason to contact someone to obtain any for monetary reasons or whatever. Those are where it comes in terms of the identity theft.
Right. So that leads into another aspect.
That is another aspect of it.
Yes. Because the identity, your identity can be stolen through scams. You voluntarily taking part in those surveys and those prize winnings and so forth that you never even entered in the first place. Those scams that pop up that you've won a prize, you've won a Samsung phone, or you've won $5,000 and so forth, and you willingly give your information, to that company or to that entity without even scrutinizing the person that is requesting that information. So it is voluntarily. Sometimes, as I say, we do things and we don't think about, the repercussions and so forth. When we are not very careful in terms of where we send our information, that can happen. Our identity can be stolen in that way as well. And of course, through what we refer to as social engineering, because we associate or we use different platforms, and we will, let's say for instance Facebook, Instagram and so forth, when we're signing up, we're asked to give certain information. If that information is publicly available, it means that someone can easily, have that information, over time build a profile and able to say, okay, I can now say I know enough about GT to be able to falsify an account on him and so forth. So these are very easy ways that person's identity can be stolen, and of course through hacking and so forth, where in some instances where we entrust our information to certain places. So the little pieces of information that goes around unguarded over time and can be collected, and our identities can be compromised.
All right. Now, what would the particular unit that you represent this month would like to encourage folks to do in terms of a way of safeguarding themselves to getting into that kind of situation?
Right. We want to ensure that persons understand that the internet is far and wide, is far-reaching. And when we share our information, especially those personal identifiable information that I just spoke to, when we share that information, ensure that it is through secure means and it is on secure sites. Or you can at least check in every now and then to ensure that data that you put out there isn't publicly available. Of course, you would also want to use extra layers of security, right? For instance, your login to your bank account and so forth, your email, which is sensitive as well, can be stolen through your identity theft. And you would want to ensure that you use double security, two-factor authentication, where you have a password and you may have to send a code to another device, right? That can help you log in securely. You also want to limit the amount of sharing of information that you give, and some persons, they will feel very comfortable giving off their password to other persons. Even the bank tells us, do not give out your ATM PIN, right? Much more. Some persons use the same email and password for different accounts online, and someone may know that password, and they are therefore able to access other accounts that you didn't give permission to. Yes.
All right. Interesting. All right. Hey, folks, we drew for our first break in this segment, folks. We're going to take a break and we come back and chat more with Sergeant Noel here on the To The Point this morning. We're coming right back. Don't touch your dial. Stay with us here on the To The Point.
Don't miss the new season of Interesting Grenadians on GBN TV and social media platforms from Wednesday, October 12th at 8 p.m. and every Wednesday until November 9th, featuring the Anya Chow Chung story, the Richard Duncan story, and lots more. It's Interesting Grenadians, celebrating our interesting and outstanding Grenadians at home and abroad. Wednesdays at 8 p.m. on GBN, beginning October 12th. You won't want to miss it.
I'm a winner, you are winner, we are winners, winners. Be an instant winner today with the NLA by simply purchasing your Daily Pick 3 and Playway tickets at your nearest agent or NLA outlet. As a proud sponsor of the CPL cricket coverage, the NLA continues to support the development of sports, culture, and nation building in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. The NLA, making your dreams a reality. I'm a winner, you are winner, we are winners, winners, winners.
families love Shirley, the Caribbean's favorite biscuit.
Feel good tax.
Remember, if you have flu symptoms, do the right thing and stay at home to avoid giving it to others. Remember, you can be infectious up to a week after developing symptoms, so rest up and take it easy.
Welcome back, folks. It's To The Point for today, Thursday, the 29th of September. Just a couple more hours, I should say, maybe in a day or two left before we wrap this. Not a day or two, just a day, right? Yeah, after today, before we wrap up the month of September. Welcome back once again, Sergeant Noel. We're back inside this morning, and we're talking this morning pertaining to, of course, the offenses that can happen to individuals, being part of the digital realm that we are in today. And one of the topics I wanted to discuss with you this morning, we could get into a little bit of discussion about, is in terms of fraud per se in the digital realm today. How is it the department deals with that particular issue?
Okay, GT, we have most times when you speak of fraud, sometimes people think about monies being lost. But under the Act, we have covered the fraud and directly leading from the identity theft as well. Somebody, you made reference to someone taking your picture and posting it on Facebook and then asking for maybe donations and so forth, right? Under Section 9, the Act speaks to persons who may induce another person into a relationship or with the intent to deceive another person, right? And or to defraud another person. And that act may cause damage or harm, right? We're using electronic means to use our devices. We go to Facebook or Instagram or so forth, WhatsApp, and we have we have your information, we have your image, and now I'm sending it to persons who you may know or may not know. That person believes that it is you, and they are willing to give your money if you request. They are willing to abide with some of your requests, let's say to see someone or to contact someone else and so forth. That is defrauding that person electronically, and that happens a lot, right? Persons, they take your images from social media, they create the fake accounts, right? They are able to contact your friends or harvest your entire friends list and start a whole new profile on you, defrauding persons, causing them to get to like you, causing them to get to advance, that cause. And the truth and the fact is that is not you.
So it's like getting into conversation with someone that you may have never thought of getting into that level of conversation before. So
right.
that could be not being fraudulent there.
That is fraudulent as well. Yes, and that is far-reaching because we have persons now whom their character is marred, right? Because based on the activities that fake account is doing, you are seen as the one behind it. Okay. You understand? So you are held liable for something that you do not even know about. And some persons do that, just to get at persons. But it is very serious because persons, their emotional, psychological, mentally sometimes derailed after this happens based on the extent to which that offense might go.
All right. What are some of the consequences that could derive from that? From the police point of view, what are some of the consequences that could be from an individual getting into that kind of fraudulent activity?
Right, but the penalty under the Act is it's a summary conviction, of course, and you can be fined a sum not exceeding $100,000. Okay. Or you can also face a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 years. Based on the severity, it can be both a fine and a term of imprisonment, right? So it's not something that you should do just because
All right.
you have access.
I asked that just in case
media.
you could, that, by expressing what the consequences could be, that could be a deterrent for individuals who are probably thinking, stealing someone's identity and making reference to them in terms of, developing a friendship that they may have known the person, not knowing that I ever wanted to have a friendship with them under those levels. So you call it, that's under that fraud level there. Knowing the consequences now, that could be a deterrent.
Well, hopefully it should be a deterrent. And that's
but not everything deters someone these days. We understand that. We understand that.
Yes.
Now, in terms of the violation of privacy per se under the Act, tell us a little bit more about that.
Right. The violation of privacy speaks to sharing content that is, let's say, explicit, that you have obtained either voluntarily from a person or where you, without the consent of that other person. And let me just explain the different subsections of the Act. So you have a device and you use that device, the electronic device, to capture or to publish, to transmit an image of the private area of a person without his or her consent. And we know the private areas from the sexual offenses and so forth. These are areas that are not generally exposed, right? So you capture or you publish, you send it out, you post it on your WhatsApp status, you post it to your Facebook Reels and so forth, right? That person's privacy is violated because you did it without their consent. Okay? Even though they're in the same space with you and they are allowed to be disrobed, meaning naked, where their parts are exposed, you still are not, let's say, authorized to capture their photograph in that sense and thereby post it after. We have the transmitting where it is sent electronically. So it's not like capturing it and print it and posting it on a poster, but you send it out electronically. So it means that it has to continue onwards, right? So we have the private area is the naked or the underclass, the genitals of that person, meaning the pubic area, the buttocks, and of course we have the female breast, right? And the publishing part of it is where it's reproduced electronically. Now, in terms of, let's say for instance, we're in a relationship, and during our relationships we would have shared intimate photos and so forth, right? I shared that with you voluntarily because we developed a level of trust. Yes. Now that relationship has disintegrated, it broke down, we moved on, but you have those images on your phone still, right? You decide to, you're in a new relationship now and that person feels maybe a little bit threatened that they have that photos there. You decide to post those photos. This is a violation of that previous person's privacy. Or your new partner decides to post those photos which was accessed from your device, which you did not protect, right? And now you are both party to violating that person's privacy. Okay? We're in an intimate situation and you decide you're going to record the act. That is violation of that person's privacy as well. What if the individual decide to give consent to the recording? If they give consent to the recording, you have that recording. It is stored on your device. If but you decide not given consent to post it, to distribute it, to share it with other persons, that is violation. All right? So it's the capturing and the publishing or transmitting, right, without consent. All without consent is a violation of that other person's privacy. I want to ask this. From time to time we see issues happening around our neighborhoods and so forth, and everybody seems to want to pop out their phones and record. You understand? No, could that be deemed as violation to someone? Let's say two individuals quarreling or getting into a fight. And we see that happening from time to time on Facebook. We see folks posting photos of videos of individuals having a fight or some form of confrontation. Is that a form of violation also? If then the individual now decides, well, I come across the video on Facebook, I didn't give these people permission to record me,
I know it's been posted on Facebook and they decide to come to the authorities about it. That's another form of, how could that be seen as?
Right. Under the Act, it is not covered as a violation of privacy because remember I spoke of the...
It's done in the public domain?
It is not only done in the public domain, but if the person was fully clad, if their genital areas or their private areas are not exposed...
So the law only deems when somebody is in,
private area,
in a private area per se.
Where the genitals are exposed.
No, I particularly asked a question when you terms in terms of folks recording videos and so forth, if that could also be deemed as, someone decided, well, I didn't give you permission to record me, but it's only, the act only sees it if someone is done in a nude way or something.
In a nude way. Yes, correct.
Okay.
We'll put it at that.
Understand that.
Yeah, yes, and persons may feel violated, embarrassed, and so forth from, fights that were captured and then shared and so forth. That can be dealt with otherwise, I think, in a civil manner, but under the Act, yes, the violation of privacy speaks to only where the nudity is involved.
So if a fight occurs and when someone get declothed, you understand? The clothing come off. That's another complex situation.
That's another complexity. But once given the circumstances, and there's the clause in here that says that that person, under the circumstances of violation of privacy, the circumstances we're speaking about, circumstances mean in which a person can have a reasonable expectation that he or she could disrobe in privacy. One, you could get, remove your clothes in privacy without being concerned that an image of his or her private area is or was being captured, and also that any part of his or her private area would not be visible to the public, right? Regardless of whether that person is in a public or a private place. Okay. That means that you could be in public where, unfortunately, your private area gets exposed. Under these circumstances, you should be excused, and therefore, if someone chooses to capture, they are going beyond and therefore violating that person's privacy.
All right, interesting.
So one person to really sink in, because as you said, we like to pull out our phones and capture even before we intervene where someone needs help. The first thing we like to do is be the first to have that post, on social, be the first to share, be the first to go live without thinking about the consequences.
Interesting there. All right. We due for another break. We're coming back here on To The Point this morning. Of course, we're talking to Sergeant Noel this morning, and we're talking about, of course, the consequences of course, crime in the digital realm this morning. We're coming right back after the break. Don't touch your dial, folks.
Trucking and Equipment Services Limited. Now introducing Portland King Seat.
Welcome back, folks. Good morning once again to our viewers and listeners this morning. It's To The Point here on K105 and GBN TV. Good morning once again also to our social media platforms, those especially via our Facebook page. Don't forget to share the live. And of course, if you do have a comment that you would like to, or a question you may like to ask via our social media platform, you'd be certainly sure once it's within the conversation, Sergeant Noel would have a citation in terms of answering. Sergeant Noel, there's another particular, of course, trend, per se, that goes around lately in terms of, child pornography, per se. How serious is this in terms of, within Grenada as a whole, and even part of the digital realm these days? How serious is that, per se?
I can say that child pornography is very serious. It is something that not just Grenada has to deal with now, especially more as we have young persons having access to devices, their own devices. And sometimes that happens without any monitoring. But on the international scale as well, child pornography is being battled with every single day. The social media platforms are also making attempts to curb as much as possible the child pornography being distributed online, because we have blockages and so forth of videos and images that are known to be child pornography, because the softwares are able to identify based on the the algorithm and so forth. So they are doing that, but it's a fight. It continues to remain a fight. Our young persons are vulnerable, right? And we have child pornography happening between persons of the non-consensual age, which is under 16 for Grenada. The consensual age shows sexual activity, right? And we also have it happening between children and adults, right? Our Electronic Crimes Act under Section 12, it speaks to child pornography in great detail, right? And under the Act, though, I must emphasize that a child is considered a person under the age of 18. Right? I just spoke about the consensual age being 16 years, but a child is considered under the age of 18 under the Act for child pornography. And you can understand, yes, children in that very volatile stage of their life, they would make certain decisions that they would probably, think twice after. Right? And the adults who don't really develop until you're 20, 21, going down there. Right? So 18 is more or less a good gauge to be able to hold someone responsible for violating that person's rights and privileges that they should be able to exercise freely.
Can I interject here and just ask you, before you move on and giving us more explanation pertaining, what can be deemed as what is child pornography per se?
Right. So the definition.
What can be defined?
It can be defined as the publishing or transmitting of sexually explicit images of a child, which would be a person under the age of 18 years under our Act.
Okay.
Right? Meaning they can be. And well, maybe I should just break it down in all the sections first so that we can, really understand it. So the Sexually Explicit Act, where is depicted a child engaged in sexual activity, right? Or sexual conduct, whether it's through, expressing themselves through dance or through anything that would more or less hinge on the part of sexuality, may arouse, sexuality, yes. So that's what we're speaking of. And it is captured, it is transmitted electronically, okay? Where you create text or digital images, or you collect, you download, you browse, right? Or you promote, they distribute material in an electronic form depicting a child in an obscene or indecent manner or in a sexually explicit manner. So let me just stick a pin here on this one, because we have persons sharing a lot of times on WhatsApp and Facebook videos of persons engaging in, let's say, explicit sexual erotic behaviors with children. You may not be the origin of it, but you downloaded it and you stored it on your device, and you're later able to send it on to someone else. That content being child pornography. So the content is child pornography, because a child now is being either sexually abused or engaged in some, adult behavior. So that is child pornography as well, right? Then we go into cultivating, enticing, or inducing a child or children into an online relationship with another child or with an adult for explicit sexual act or in a manner that may offend a reasonable adult on an electronic system.
Could you define that a little bit more?
Right.
Yeah, that particular act.
That subsection C here. Right. You cultivate, you cause a relationship to start. So you may have a normal relationship with a child, or that child trusts you, you are friends with their parents and so forth. But then it goes further where you want to enter into an intimate relationship with that child. And you use that electronic means to continue speaking to that child, luring that child, or enticing, inducing, grooming the child toward the point where they can voluntarily, well, not voluntarily because it's still non-consensual, but where they would open up themselves to you, have a relationship with you, and of course you engage in sexual act with that person. So the end product is for sexually explicit manner or in other adult related activities, right? That relationship would be considered as child pornography, right, or derived from child pornography, right, because you're able to move that child away from just an ordinary trust relationship to having an intimate relationship, and we see that happening a lot.
Can I interject here again and ask another question? Because we know from time to time we see or we hear, per se, of youngsters getting themselves involved in terms of the age range. You just give a definition that, of course, a child is still considered a child up to the age of 18. So what if two 18-year-olds decide to get themselves into that particular situation? How is that looked into?
Right, so that is
because sometimes it may not always be an adult per se, someone who have gotten to that age, but individuals within that same age range and decide to get into the photography and so forth. And how is that dealt with?
We have that occurring, and we have had to deal with a couple of those because to the children, they see it as normal. They are in a relationship. They are both children, and they think that is okay to not only engage in the act but also to make record and so forth of it. So on the relationship side of it, no, of course the children do not receive the penalty as the adult.
As an adult.
Right? And the penalty here is a fine not exceeding $200,000 or a term of 5 years in prison. Right? But we have children who have had to what we call the remedial punishment and so forth.
Counseling and so forth.
Right, intervention, because in most instances there are underlying, problems that would stem that kind of behavior.
All right.
And of course, whether it's a child, where the accused is a child or an adult, the victim, the childhood is stripped away. Right? We have the long-term psychological, we have emotional problems and so forth. We have the loss of self-esteem. We have damages in relationship because now you get to a point where you don't want to trust, most persons. But the children occurrence, yes, that is dealt with, and it is a challenge because we see more of it happening within the school environment, within the social environment, and so forth. But we still want to, bring out the point that, yes, it is an offense, even though it's a child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And I guess later on I would, have to speak to the responsibility of parents and responsible adults in helping those children to address these issues.
Well, we could actually get into that particular segment here now, where in terms of the responsibility or the blame per se. How does, let's say you as a parent, your son or daughter get themselves into a situation of that nature. How is it now that the parent plays a part in this in terms of the blame per se, if we want to put that, if we want to put it in the simplest way of explaining the blame per se?
The blame, yes, because it starts with education. How do you educate your child when you place a device in their hand, or when you tell them, okay, they can be friends with, let's say, Miss Jean's daughter, or with you have a girl child and you can be friends with
Mr. John.
Mr. Johnson, right? You have to now know where to draw the line, when to say no. What are the values that you teach your children, right? Is it okay to just start talking to someone online and they can, know everything about you, and then you decide to meet them, right? Get engaged in activities and so forth. So parents need to have the conversation very early with their children. We have, and as I said earlier, a lot of it stems from the child having access to device or devices when they are not monitored. A lot of the activities happen. Sexting is one of the activities that leads to a lot of times child pornography and violation of privacy, where you send sexually explicit material, whether it's through video calling and images, WhatsApping, Facebook and Messenger and so forth. So it starts there and then it continues where it's like no big deal that we can record and maybe share with friends and so forth. You understand?
Understand.
So the children needs to understand that also there are long-term effects. When you post something, you cannot take it back, right? It's gonna pop up later on in life when you're least expecting it. It is always out there. Yes, someone has it. Yeah. Yes. So being able to have healthy relationships starts with the parent educating the children.
And it also leads to the consequences where youngsters seeing they've been entertained in conversations of nature in terms of reporting it to their parents. Mom, dad, I'm getting this message from Mr. John, which I think
You're not
it may not
yes.
comfortable of me. I don't think is appropriate, and the matter could be also. How is it that the unit per se? How can I put this? Encourage folks to come to you in terms of situations of that nature.
Right. And yes, it is a call that we are always making through the Special Victims Unit, which deals specifically with, those incidences and so forth. We want persons to not see it as something that we can just push aside. An offense is committed and somebody needs help. The best thing is to report it so that it can be thoroughly investigated and that help can be given to those persons. So we're encouraging persons, if, let's say for instance, also too, some children may share, they may tell another adult, okay, yes, I was involved with, Tom or so forth, and this happened. When it happened, he recorded, and they may, share that information with them, report it. Right? Or you may get a video. The person's involved in the video. Don't send it further because that is a violation under the Act as well. Report it, right? Because we now have to be able to get to the bottom of whatever is causing what we call deviant behavior. That's what it is, really. Right.
And even if the video was consensual, it doesn't mean you have the right to share it. You
don't have the right to share it. Yes.
And we see that or even hear of that happening from time to time. Folks are seeing it. There's not much consequences folks think can derive from that, but you're saying, because you just gave a while ago, the charges and so forth,
yes,
that could come around.
$200,000
if you get yourself involved in situations of that nature. It's interesting. Let's take another break. We come back, and of course, we're going to invite comments from folks who may have a comment or two may want to pass on this morning, especially those of you via, of course, social media platforms, WhatsApp. We will take your comments and see, and of course, Sergeant Noel will try her best to see if she's able to answer them. All right? We're coming right back after a break. 15 minutes moving out before the top of the hour this morning. It's to the point for today, Thursday.
Kenny's Trucking and Equipment Services Limited. Now introducing Portland King Cement, Grenada's toughest and most high-quality cement. Engineered with you in mind. Whether it's residential or industrial construction, Portland King Cement has been tested to achieve profound results that you can trust. The choice is clear. Choose Portland King, tougher than the rest. Visit Kenny's Trucking and Equipment Services Limited on Dusty Highway. Call telephone number 439-6605 or 440-6605. Or visit our two other locations, Wester Hall in St. David and Dunfermline in St. Andrew.
Spare pocket. always act when let you come first. Spare your pocket, spare the earth. Always act when let you come first.
Building or renovating your home or business? Why not use clean, renewable energy? Install solar panels to power your home and office and see your energy costs go down and your savings go up. Using renewable solar-powered energy protects our environment, reduces our carbon footprint, and slows the devastating impact of climate change. Republic Bank can help to finance construction and renovations that make use of renewable energy. Visit any Republic Bank branch and ask about renewable energy financing options today.
Republic Bank, we're the one for you.
It is important to know what your road signs and markings means. The zigzag lines means you should not park in the marked area. Parking is allowed inside the solid white lines on the edge of the road. Remember, look out for pedestrians. Pedestrians, be sure the vehicle comes to a complete stop before crossing. These tips can save your life. These tips can make our roads safer for all users. Be safe, be seen, be smart. A message from the Traffic Department of the Royal Grenada Police Force.
Welcome back, folks, to the point for today, Thursday, and we are speaking with Sergeant Noel here from the Digital Forensic Unit of the Royal Grenada Police Force. And I'm looking at some of the comments that are coming in this morning, and one of the comments, we were actually talking about it off air, but I'll let you expand on it just a wee bit, for the benefit of the listener out there. And they're saying it's a bit confusing. 16 years is for consent. Why is for child pornography is 18? Why could you, if you want to expand on that just a wee bit?
Right. So yes, for some persons it will be confusing, and the drafters or legislators would have known why they had put it at that. But let us look at 16 years, you consent to sexual activity. Now, we're talking about recording and reproducing that activity to persons who are not involved in the act. And that is where the violation happens. So while you may consent to be in a relationship, having, sexual activity, being in what you say adult conduct at that time, but if that person without your consent now records that activity and chooses to share
that's what the problem
with other persons, or even records without you knowing, that is where the problem is. And we're saying that 18 years, you still have the right to say, okay, no, I don't want to be recorded in that manner. Okay. I don't want that, aspect to be publicly known. Okay. Right? Okay. So
even though you're at the age for consent.
You at the age for consent, and because that is it is an intimate relationship. It is an intimate activity, and it is supposed to be private between the two of you, right? If you are violated where that person chooses to record and share that activity with someone else.
All right. I'm seeing another comment here from a viewer listener via our Facebook comment section. And this individual is asking this question. What if someone steals your device, break the passcode per se, and go through the phone, then forward information to another device, then returns you the device after? How is that the invasion of privacy dealt with? Do you understand the question?
I do understand, and we have had that situation. We have had at least one matter in that instance where, yes, someone knows you have that image on the device, they forward it to someone else without your knowledge, and later on then sends it off to another person. That person who stole the device or broke into the device is held accountable for the violation of Privacy Act, right? Because it is that person that published it right? So the owner of the device, yes, they may have captured it with that person's consent, or sometimes maybe without the person's consent. If it is realized later that it was captured, first of all, without the person's consent, then you are now held liable for capturing. And the person that stole it and sent it out is held liable for publishing.
Okay.
Right? So
it's a little technical, but I do understand where you're going from. Anyhow, you think once the whatever you got from the device is published,
yes,
there's a consequences.
There are consequences.
Derived from that.
Yes.
All right. Interesting there. Folks, we're taking your comments. If you do have a comment, we were not planning on taking calls today, so I hope folks who are calling in, if you want to chime in on the program, let's keep it in context of what we're discussing this morning, please. So let's try one caller and see if that caller is online with us. Good morning to you, caller. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
I am listening to the program, but I'm wondering, for example, during Carnival, there was so much nudity. You are videotaping the Carnival, and you are sending it to your friends abroad. Are you responsible for any nudity that would show up in that event? Also, some of the things that are shown on television is tantamount to what the officer is explaining. Thank you.
Thank you, dear caller, for your contribution this morning. I guess you understand where the caller is coming from. We did allude to a question earlier pertaining to that, but you were saying sometime under the context, because it's of the public nature, it may not be.
Right. That person, yes. And when we look at most of our laws, I have to be violated, and I have to feel hurt in some way to be able to, unless it's a child, of course, right? With a child is different, but as an adult, yes, I have to feel violated. And persons, yes, in the public domain, that was the Carnival season, as a matter of fact, or the whole environment around Carnival is to express yourself in whatever manner. So a lot of persons choose to, wear what we call skimpish clothing. I don't recall seeing any where genitals were exposed, right? So there's a difference there as well. If the genitals were exposed, then of course, yes, that would be considered as a violation. If that person's feel you didn't have the right to capture me in that manner and then, publish it out, right? So there could be a little gray line here in terms of the material that we see online, right? And especially in terms of the carnival aspect of it, right? So yes, they are expected to, as the act says, you are expected to have that kind of right of freedom whether you're in a private place or in a public space. Okay, in terms of what is on television, now that goes to the part of child pornography, because if you're exposing a child to adult content, right, then that more or less would be considered, because you are now in cultivating them in the minds, more or less, that kind of activity, right? So the part of persons being held accountable for capturing persons who were reveling at the time, no, that wouldn't be considered in violation, unless someone would have in some mishap exposed their genitals, and someone would have made more or less added to it connotation that so forth. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we only have practically 2 minutes left on the program this morning. I just want you to make, of course, some advice out there, especially to folks who may be thinking to going along that line, especially in terms of child pornography. You understand, who are thinking all that line. Folks who are probably thinking, well, I could invade on someone's privacy or violate someone's privacy on that level. What sort of advice would you like to give folks to instead of deteriorate, for them to, of course, not even think about going along those lines before we take a wrap this morning?
Right. I just want to remind persons that we do expect persons to be able to engage in their rights and freedom right, as individuals, and as a force, we always take, persons and justice seriously. We would continue to put efforts in place to investigate and to prosecute, offenders who, after having knowledge of what are the circumstances and the violations, still go ahead and commit those offenses. I would also encourage persons, users, you have access to your devices, and yes, you are free to do with it whatever you want with it, but be mindful that, you should think before you click, because once you put something out there, you are held liable for it. It can come back when you're least expecting it. It doesn't go away. And you have to be responsible even as a user and to look out for other persons as well. All right. The internet, some persons may think they can hide behind it. It is not anonymous as we think. All right. And there are methodologies that we can use to discover persons unscrupulous activities and so forth. Right. So I just want persons to bear that in mind. We have the laws in place, and we are going to use them to ensure that every citizen feels safe in the use of the devices and to be able to transact, whether it's business or social activities on a daily basis.
All right. Sergeant Noel, I want to thank you so much for popping in this morning and sharing information that you did share with us this morning. It was a pleasure having you, and I certainly hope the viewers and listeners out there had learned a lot from, of course, in terms of all that was said this morning, and be cautious in terms of what they go about doing.
Certainly.
Thanks a whole lot for being with us this morning here on To The Point. This is where we say goodbye for today. Join us again tomorrow for another edition of To The Point. Have yourself a great day, folks.